What is up, everybody? It is Sean the Sane here. Sorry that I've been kind of MIA lately just with life and stuff, but we have a very special video today, kind of a new series that I'm going to probably start doing. It's going to be almost like a meta analysis of very popular decks, whatever is like topping tournaments or whatever is you just see like everywhere. We're going to kind of break it down and just talk about it, like its matchups, the ratios, all that good stuff. So you kind of have a better understanding and maybe like where it's going to be in the future and where we think it'll go moving forward. So that's kind of the point of these videos. So we'll do more of these in the future because I think it's a good idea and it's a good way to kind of challenge and look at deck building from a different perspective, but also just to kind of break down like how good some of these decks really are. I know that I usually lead on this channel because it's my channel, obviously, but today I actually have my friend Colin here, and he's going to be talking about Katakuri because he is a pretty big Katakuri player. So I'm going to kind of take the back seat on this one, which for the first time in a while, which is kind of nice. um, but yeah, we'll be going back and forth between each other and kind of talking about, just the deck and just the meta right now. So yeah. So Colin, before we get into kind of like the nitty-gritty of like this video, what is it about Katakuri that you like so much and how long have you been playing Katakuri?
So I've been playing Katakuri for a little over like 6 months now since Sean actually showed me how to play this game with Katakuri. So the first deck I ever played, I think it was great for new people to be able to learn. I think it does take a little bit of skill to master. And then of course, who doesn't love yellow? Who doesn't love Katakuri? And then who doesn't love the triggers that happen every game?
Yeah.
I like the interactive with that. Your opponent might not, but I do like how the deck is interactive and really fun to play against. And I also just, who doesn't love the Big Mom theme?
Yeah, no, the Big Mom package is very strong and it seems to just get kind of better and better as cards from the Big Mom just are starting to get really expensive and we're starting to get more support for it. So, and yeah, no, I totally agree. I think Katakuri is a solid deck. I mean, I played it a lot back in the OP03 and OP04 days, and that was the first deck that I saw like a lot of success with. And I absolutely think that it's a great beginner deck if you're trying to convince your friend to get into One Piece, or you're trying to get into One Piece but you don't know what to do. I think yellow is a really good starter color. Again, it's the first deck that I ever saw any success with. I don't know why. I feel like red would probably be the best one, but I don't know why. I was not a good red player. I don't know what it was. I could not master red when I first got into the game.
Red has that hard balance where it's like you either have to be very aggressive and know like how to win with that deck, versus yellow, you're aggressive, but you also have other abilities that kind of just help you out like for free.
Yeah. No, I agree. And then there's blue and purple, which are also can be really strong, but are just kind of niche. So yeah, I think we're both kind of on the same page that yellow is like the perfect like starting deck, and it is a very strong color. And that's why there's a lot of hate for it right now. There's a lot of yellow hate. So
Yep, I think everyone's gonna hate yellow as long as they keep printing great yellow triggers. That's just what people don't like to see. And obviously, with OKQ, getting that new trigger, as long as they're 3 or less life, which for Katakuri is super easy to maintain and get. It's just that free play card. You don't have to discard a card and lose hand advantage. They just printed busted cards.
yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like what cards kind of get banned, because I know with this most recent ban list, a lot of people thought for sure that like the 10 cost Big Mom was going to get restricted, but it didn't. And then people thought for sure that like a lot of yellow stuff was going to get hit, and it didn't. It was more like Sakazuki, which is funny because here in North America, yellow has been kind of the king, whereas in Japan and Asia, they're really big on Sakazuki. They really like Sakazuki. But everybody kind of seems to agree that Sakazuki is the most consistent deck in the game right now. I mean, at Worlds, every finishing person was a Sakazuki player.
No, I entirely agree. I think yellow is fantastic, and I think Katakuri is fantastic. But for some of those games, if you have to win 8, 9, 10 games to be able to get to those top finishes, I think using Sakazuki, you're just going to have that more roundabout, win every game. You with that fantastic draw mechanic that they decided to print on a leader card for some reason. I think it's just able to win more consistently over the longer span there.
So why don't you go ahead and kind of talk about the lists and like the must-have cards that you have from your list?
Yeah, so starting off, the first must-have is you're going to be having four puddings for sure. Fantastic searcher, obviously, and then if you end up not needing to search and someone's swinging for game, you can at least get a 1K counter in hand.
Yeah, I mean it's every card has a searcher. It's just it's card draw, so you got to run it.
Yeah, staple. Second staple, Peril Sparrow, turn two play all the time. Great KO effect to find your big mom package. Um, Running all four of those for sure.
Yeah, I
No
mean
counter, which is less ideal, but
yeah,
that's still
but
all right.
I mean 3 5Ks, like 3 cost 5Ks and 4 cost 6Ks are just super important in this game. So you just kind of have to have them.
And obviously the two big staples we're going to talk about: 7 cost Linlin, and then 10 cost Linlin. That is your end game big mom package. Running four of each, can search off things. Obviously the 7 cost. Most of the time they're going to give you a life because most opponents aren't going to want to take a life against you. And then
Yeah,
10 cop, it's 10 drop. It's obviously forced. They don't have a choice. But either way, you can gain a life, so it's always fantastic. Even if they don't have life, getting a 12K on board is still going to win you games.
yeah, I think it varies depending on what deck you're playing. I do agree. I think in most cases that your opponent is going to want to give you life, but there are some situations I've been in where I've actually trashed my life. It's like really late game, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to give my opponent. I don't want to delay this game even more because I'm going to swing out next turn. So, but in most cases, yes, I usually do give them life.
And then of course, the next one is the Sanji blocker. Fantastic trigger. Obviously, one of the best yellow blockers that they have printed since the beginning of time. So you're going to be running all four of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, if you pull that out of your life, you can pretty much pull out for game. Like if you're in a really tight situation and you pull that out of life and discard a card, you can essentially win the game with the card, and that's why it's kind of dumb. And it's way better than Brule because it has some weight to it. It doesn't just die. So, and
Yep.
it's 3 cost, right?
4 cost.
4 cost. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, four
So
cost five. 4 cost 5K. You do have to discard a card, but you're most likely fine with that because if it's a dire situation, you've got Peros, 7 cost, even 10 cost big moms with no counters on it, so you're willing to toss one of those
right.
to get it on board. And then the next staple, which I think a lot of people actually wanted to get restricted and banned, but didn't, would be beige. Going to be running all four of those guys.
Yeah.
Obviously, for anyone that doesn't know, the fantastic trigger is you can choose a character or leader that doesn't get to attack that turn, which,
Yeah.
especially versus Uta, if they're trying to play I'm invincible and go for game, you just ruin their game plan, and if you're probably winning the next turn.
Yeah, honestly, I thought for sure maybe that was on the list of cards that I thought maybe would get banned or restricted just because that trigger is just insane, but also like 2K. So, yeah, that card, like Sanji, can be very deadly because it can just shut down. It can literally win you a game. Like that's why there's so much yellow hate, is because of stuff like that. Yeah. So, yeah, insanely good card. Well, insanely good trigger. So,
Yeah, no, definitely go to trigger. If it's not triggering, you just got a 2K in hand. You'll use it quickly. The next one, which I would say some people disagree with. I know a lot of people do run 3, but I'd say most of the time, and for me, I run 4 is Gadatsu, which is obviously the five mana can KO anything up to your opponent's life. Typically, if depending on how you're swinging, you can KO any 3 or 4 cost card, which is fantastic for free. There's no abilities; you just get to play the card, and you get to establish a 6K body on board, which is fantastic.
yeah. No, Gadatsu is really good. Definitely a great addition for Katakuri and OP05. And it's really good in Enel too. But yeah, you run 4, correct?
Yes, I'm currently running 4, and it's been great. Late game, it is just a counter in hand because most of the time you've got their life down. But at that point, you're not really worried about killing a lot of their things, and you have other ways to get through their blockers and some of their life as well. So you really just want it for the counter.
But it's a 4 cost 6K, correct? Or is it 3
Uh,
cost?
Gidatsu,
Yeah.
it's a 5 cost 6K.
Okay. So it's a little more expensive because there's a lot of 4 cost 6Ks like Lucci. Lucci is a 4 cost 6K, but it doesn't have a counter. So essentially, you're
Yeah,
paying one more for that counter in the card.
exactly.
Okay.
So it's just nice because if you go first, you can just use your 5 Dawn and KO any 3 or 4 drop, and then if you go second, you get to do that plus get a 7K swing in, which is just like a fantastic turn 3 to have. You
Right.
can get rid of your opponent's body on board.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the next card is going to be Satori, which is mainly you've got it for the 2K, and you've got it because it's got the trigger to discard a card, play a card. Fantastic 5K body. You're just going to play 4, and it's mainly just because of the 2K, just because Katakuri only has so many.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of these 2Ks that I've noticed so far, like in Katakuri, is that like regardless of how well you do, like if you get more than like 2 triggers off life, you're gonna get put ahead or put ahead of your opponent in some type of way. Just doing the math, like especially whether it's a beige trigger, whether it's an Amaru trigger, whether it's a Sanji trigger, you're gonna be put ahead of your opponent in some shape or form.
Yeah, if they swing first life versus you and you get a good trigger, it makes the game a lot more harder for your opponent to be able to come back.
Yeah.
One of the newer cards just came out that's getting popularity and also getting a lot of hate is Onami. Obviously, 2 cost 1K, but you on play you gain a character or leader banish, which obviously if you don't know if you can hit him for life, they have to trash that card, which is fantastic. Being able to block your opponent's card advantage.
Yes.
But the other big thing is the trigger is KO any 5K,
Yeah.
which is fantastic because if you're going against purple or black, Borsellino gone because he only gets he can't be KO'd on your opponent's turn, but he can be KO'd on your turn. The popular one that's hard to get rid of is the kid blocker for purple if they have that out. It's hard to like even rest that character because you'll use Amaru, so that's where you really might want to have that trigger because if you can KO that 5K to be able to get through them to their life, you're gonna beat most of any purple deck that you're playing.
Yes.
Another new card as well. Next on the list is Okiku. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but it is the 4-drop 6K that came out where if your opponent has 3 or less life and it's KO'd, you gain 1 life, which is fantastic in yellow because it's hopefully, most likely, a free trigger that you're getting on your life stack. But the other good thing is if it does get triggered and they have 3 or less life, you get to play the card from life. No, downside effect. You don't have to discard any cards, so it's just a free 6K body at that point as long as you've hit them twice. Maybe
Yeah.
in some cases once.
Yeah, this card honestly really pisses me off whenever I'm going against it. When I'm playing like Moria against it, it just reminds me of like Magellan in Purple Luffy because it's like your opponent has to respect it because if you get rid of it, you're going to be punished for it. I mean, granted, I think with this card, it's not as punishing as Magellan because when Magellan gets KO'd, you lose 2 Dawn or you get 2 Dawn back to your deck. With Kiku, it's just more annoying because it just delays the game. So like maybe your opponent's at 1 life or 2 life, and you just have to clear their board somehow, or you just have to do something, and your only option is to KO it or swing at it. And depending on the situation, it could just delay the game, or it could just totally put you out of winning the game. So that's why honestly, when it's out, I try to avoid swinging at it, depending on the situation. Because again, it could also put your opponent above starting life, depending on what they're playing.
Yep, and most people I will say just ignore it unless it's coming down to where they've got 1 or 2 life cards left, and it's they would rather give me a life card than have me just sit there swinging a 6K every turn for free. It just comes down to one of those just in-game decisions that you just have to make.
Right.
So another card that people did also think might be on the chopping block is the 2 million volts. I'm currently running 3. That's what most people are running, but obviously if you can give your leader plus 3K, 2 Dawn plus 3K attack for the turn, but then the good part is if you've got 1 or less life, you get to rest a 4 or less cost character, which most of the time you're going to pick almost any blocker they have, as long as it's not one of the 5K the 5 cost blockers.
Yeah.
And that right there will win you the game.
Yeah, and it also has a trigger, I believe, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. You can if you have no life cards, you can discard 2 cards as that trigger and gain a life.
Yeah. Yeah, super good. Super good.
Which is fantastic because if you really need that, you can get one. You can there's lots of dead cards sometimes in your hand, or you have a few big moms. If you're really in that situation where that's your last life, you're going to toss a couple of those, gain that life, and then maybe hopefully you can get a good trigger as well to try and make a comeback on your next turn. Gosh, lots of new cards coming up. So the next one is the 0 cost event. It's got a long name. I just basically call it yours every time. Every opponent knows what it is. Every yellow player knows what it is. But
you're the one who should disappear. I have it right here. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's you may trash 1 card from your hand up to one of your leader's characters gains plus. So it's basically like every color has a 0 cost event that you can trash a card and get plus 3,000. Like I'm pretty sure every color has one. They're just different names.
Yep, and they're going for it. And of course, the only downside is you just have to discard a card, which is usually easy to do. But the best part is the trigger on this. So obviously with Katakuri's ability, you can bottom deck your life. So if you ever see this card in your life, it's an instant bottom deck because with the trigger, it's an Anel effect. If they hit you, you get to do the Anel effect for free with trigger.
Right.
And it's basically just like the better version than doing it with Amaru. But of course, you're only going to run 2 just because it needs to be in your life, or you're going to have to just try and use it as a counter. So you're not going to run it as much. And then the last event that we're going to be running is Reject or Impact, depending on what website you're using to look at decks. But that is the card that did get the hammer.
Thank God.
It made Anel and Katakuri fantastic this set. It wins lots of games. Katakuri always typically has more life and is always willing to give their last life to take your opponent's last life. But the other good side to this one is with 2 million volts, if you cannot get through their 5 cost blocker, Reject can, because it can KO any 5 or less character.
But you have the option to deal 1 damage to your opponent.
Yes, you have to both be at your opponent needs to be at 1 life though.
Yeah, but still, that's dumb. I was like,
no, it is.
This is one of the few cards that I understand why there's so much yellow hate, but also it's like, why did they even print this? It's like yellow. It's not like yellow's already good enough. Why do we need this? This I for sure am glad they banned, but also it's like, why did they even print this card?
Yeah, no, I don't know why it was even printed because it's fantastic. Even the trigger, you get to draw a card. If it's the top of your life, boom, you could if you just need a cycle, you have your second one in hand and you're just like dead draws, you get a free draw. And then of course with the second part of dealing 1 damage to them is you gain the top life card to your hand, which in some cases you just want that extra card in your hand. It could be something you need to play. So then now you're at card advantage just for having it in the deck list.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that they're banning that card for sure.
Same here. It's gonna hurt next set. But
same here. You're playing Katakuri. What do you mean?
So.
What do you mean?
Oh,
you just want to get more hits on the deck? Is that it?
I think they just need to print even better trigger cards. They just need to keep it going. Katakuri can rule them all every set.
Well, I will say I think it's funny this set that the meta has changed so much that now black actually has a good matchup into yellow. Because I remember back in OP03, one of the main issues with black back in like the Lucci days when Rob Lucci was semi decent in OP03, black struggled against yellow so much. Like that was the main thing. Like there's the Lucci leader, there's the black and yellow Big Mom leader, which wasn't that good. And then there was the black Luffy starter deck, which wasn't that good either. And even today, it's still just kind of eh. But I mean, Moria and Sakazuki, like Moria has a really good matchup into Katakuri. Like honestly, like I love playing against Katakuris with Moria. Like it's just so fun. But I mean, like the basic strategy against Katakuri is just out tempo your opponent. Just go wide and like swing, like go wide and swing. Just swing for face every single. Because if you can out aggression Katakuri, you can win.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to with some of those matchups. I'd say Katakuri also, if they can go second, can get sometimes a good advantage just because you get to play on curve and get the 7K swing each turn, which that can definitely in some of your less favorable matchups will definitely help you out. But that's of course the luck of the dice.
Right.
And then the last main staple card that we're gonna have in here is of course the four Amandas. 2K, searchable with Big Mom Pirates, with pudding, if stuff like that. If you brick, so that's just like that's the last 2K counter you're having. That's like the last 4 of.
Right. Right. Okay. Cool. So that's just kind of the like basic. That's like the very standard list for Katakuri, correct?
Yes. On average, that's your standard list. I'll give a couple, honorable mentions. Strusen came in at a couple. Most of the time, you would just run. You wouldn't have any of them in your deck, but they only came in even numbers. So if people weren't running 0, they're either running 2 or they're running 4. Just cutting a couple other things. Really, just for that, they just want that 2K counter. That's all it's for.
Yeah. Yeah. You never play that card.
Yep. And then the only other couple that came close is some people were teching out one 7-cost Linlin for an 8-cost Katakuri. I don't do that personally, but some people are having a lot of success with doing that. I just didn't know how consistent. I just don't think it's that consistent. Of if you need that Katakuri, that you're gonna find it if it's 1 of 50.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you not playing the 8-cost Katakuri because of how expensive it is, or because you just think that there are better cards to put in there?
I'd say it's both. I think one, it's really expensive for one of in Katakuri because I don't think you need it. I don't think you need it in Katakuri to win at all. I think at that point in Katakuri, you can either just put a trigger card in, another event, or frankly just add another 2K counter and you'd be just as fine.
Do you think it's better in a Nell than Katakuri? The 8-cost Katakuri?
Yes. 8-cost Katakuri, 4 of is a staple in a Nell. I think if you want to play a Nell, and you want to be competitive, you have to run 4 of. I think in Katakuri, you don't have to run Katakuri or don't have to run the 8-cost Katakuri at all to be competitive.
Okay. I'm curious to see what people in the comments or what other agree or disagree. I mean, I think most people will agree with us that 8-cost Katakuri is better in a Nell than it is in normal Katakuri.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It does great things because like obviously the best thing I'm thinking of is you can get rid of an 8-cost kid on board with it. But other than that, you're not really playing on turn 8 for that. You have other things you're gonna do on 8. That's gonna work out just as fine for you. It's just not in the game plan versus a Nell where a Nell's trying to sustain and outlast your opponent. With Katakuri, at a certain point, you're just trying to kill him.
Right.
And that's just not a card that's gonna help get you there.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay. Awesome. So that is basically a breakdown of like the very standard Katakuri list. Like basically like cards that you need in the deck in this format, in the OP06 format. So now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of take a look at the matchups. So if you want to pull up the matchups real quick. So basically like what maybe a lot of people would be surprised by, or what like in our own experience playing in like locals or tournaments, like kind of what kind of our experiences have been. So Colin, what is the first matchup that we have listed for
Yeah, so
Katakuri?
this is kind of your could go either way. Gonna depend on the draw. If you brick, pretty even matchups. And so just going off the top, it's kind of Sakazuki, Zoro, Yamato, Reiju, and Queen. Um, these are all pretty 50-50. Depends on the draw. A couple there, Zoro and Yamato, if they're the two most aggressive decks in the OP06 format right now, and if they get going early, Katakuri just can't deal with everything, and they're going to be able to just take your life. And if you don't get good triggers when they swing at you, you're not going to have a good day. But on the flip side, if you get good triggers and you can KO their stuff, if you can get enough Gadatsus to kill all their smaller characters, you're going to be able to win that game.
Okay.
Um,
So 50-50 50-50 Sokka, Zoro, Yamato, Reiju, Queen. These are like, so it could go either way, is what you're saying?
yes, yeah, very very much either way.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, I forgot Queen was even a deck, to be honest, because I haven't seen it since like OP04. But yeah.
You're only going to see Queen at your locals, and it's someone that's just a Queen fan, and they're going to say it's the best deck ever.
Yeah, I think with Zoro, like one of the main reasons why it's 50-50 is just because like again, just out tempoing your opponent and just out aggressing Katakuri. So I feel like yeah, if you're on curve, you're seeing all the cards you need, I could totally see Zoro beating Katakuri.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then
Um,
Yamato, I've never played the deck itself. I've played against a lot of Yamatos so far from tournaments, and I feel like with Yamato, it is very 50-50 because I feel like it has a lot of flaws. It does really bad against like removal.
yeah, no, I actually at my locals I played against I won against Yamato, and basically if I was able to stay above 3 life and not be able to have their Dom move around, they weren't able to be as effective. And then if I'm playing stuff and just killing their board and then swinging at them, they weren't able to stop that. And then once we got up to the 8 and 10 Dawn turns, just playing 7 cost Big Mom, they really don't want to lose their life. They're being aggressive. Um, so they're gonna gain it. They're gonna let you gain it and then try and take it back. But it's just one of those things. I gained so much life. I had 7 life. They wanted to swing with double attack. Sure, I'll take my triggers. You can't use her ability at that point because you have to be 3 or less, and that was a huge game changer.
Yeah. Um, as far as Reiju goes, I don't really have a lot to say about that deck because I've personally never played it. I played against quite a bit at the PPG case tournament last month, and from the players that I talked to, just in general, they kind of seem to be like they really enjoy playing the deck, but at the same time, it's like if they don't see something, if they don't see the materials that they need, like for example, one opponent I went against could not find the stage, and I just absolutely just it was not a close game. So he didn't see his stage like till the very end of the game, and he was just kind of like crippled throughout the entire game. So obviously it has some flaws, but I've also seen it pop off and do really well. So what are your kind of thoughts on Reiju and Katakuri?
Yeah, with Rage, same feeling. If they draw the perfect hand, I think they're gonna win every game. I almost say the same thing like about Bello Betty. It's almost like it's like a more consistent glass cannon. But if Reiju doesn't draw the cards they need, they're gonna get blown out of the water by just a lot of decks that are relatively aggressive.
Yeah. And I think overall it's a very combo heavy deck, so you have to kind of like piece together. It's almost like Exodia. You have to get all the pieces together and then you'll pop off. So yeah, it looks fun. I will say there was a point where I was thinking about building it, but I'm just sold on Moria at this point. So yeah. So cool. That's like the 50-50 matchups. So not necessarily good, not necessarily bad. So kind of fair, I guess. Kind of
Yeah,
neutral.
yeah, I'd call it fair, neutral.
Okay. And then we'll move down one to the favorable. So what is this column exactly?
Yeah, so these are all the matchups that I think Katakuri, going tournament based, um, on average is going to do better against. Maybe you're talking 60-40, 70-30, kind of somewhere around there. I think right now in OP06 with the cards that Katakuri has, I think it's really favorable against Anel, Moria, Perona, RP Luffy, and then Bello Betty.
Okay, well, first off, let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Do you
I
actually
know.
agree about the Moria thing? Because I don't. I'm pretty on the fence about that one. And I'm not just saying that just because I play Moria, but I'm just saying like from what I've seen other people play. I don't know if I'd say it's favorable. But what is your argument for it being favorable?
So this is just me playing against it a little bit and seeing a couple other local Katakuri players also play against it. Is I think we've actually all had success against Moria. I don't obviously it's not all the time, and I think it's going to be biased because I think right now there's a ton of Moria players, so obviously they are going to win some games against Katakuri. But so far, I think in the past few local tournaments, I've just seen Katakuri be able to pull it out a little better. Uh, I think with Katakuri, if you can play the cards that you want on curve, and the way you swing at life really helps. Um, the thing with Moria having 5 life is it's really good with Gadatsu if you can have that early, and depending on how you watch how you attack, you can KO any 3 or 4 drop that they're going to play, and hopefully get that early game aggression. Obviously, I think triggers also depend on all these games. Like if you get 0 triggers, I think with any person you're playing against, you're going to have a harder game versus if you get 1 or 2, or even if you get really lucky and say all 5 are fantastic triggers.
Yeah, I think again, there's a reason why people call Katakuri the smooth brain deck. It's like you could play just fucking horrible, or your luck is really bad. But I mean, you get one trigger, or you have one like just absolute, just amazing turn, and you could easily get put back in the game. From what I've seen, at least, I feel like if it gets to a point where like it's so late in the game that obviously like if you've made this many misplays, then yeah, you're kind of screwed. But like if it's early enough in the game, and you just get really lucky, or your opponent does a misplay, I think you're still set in it just because luck is on your side, and just because you have a lot of ways to delay the game and push back. Now my argument for why I don't necessarily think Moria is like, or Katakuri is favored against Moria is because with Moria, if you early in the game, if you play Sindri and then mill the top 5 and then just leader skill like every single turn, and let's say for example you play Perona, you can starve your opponent and make them discard one card, and then you're getting cards out of their hand, and then you're also building a board. So not only are you taking away your opponent's card advantage, but you're also building a board. And I think is why I like whenever I play against a Katakuri, I think Moria does really well because of your leader skill, being able to play Absalom or play Perona from your trash or play Dr. Hogback. Because every single one of those cards, the Thriller Bark cards that you want to play from your trash, have some sort of effect that favors you. And it's usually card advantage, or it's usually like building a board. Because with Dr. Hogback, you can essentially get more 2Ks in hand, which not a lot of decks in this game right now have those tools. So, that's kind of like from what I've seen. Obviously, if you whiff, you whiff. So I mean, but that's pretty much my argument against this sheet. I'm not necessarily saying that like Katakuri is absolute trash against Moria. I don't think that at all. I'm just saying I don't know if I'd necessarily say that it's favored against Moria.
No, I can definitely agree with that a little bit as well. And I this is one thing too is obviously as new decks come out like Moria, I think part of it is Katakuri's been around forever. So I think at a certain point, your player base is playing Katakuri versus Moria at stores or tournaments, has played just probably a couple more games, with that leader that I think can always just like lean that a little bit one way.
Yeah.
But I think ones that I would say are favorable, but not by much. I would put kind of like a couple of those in there, which would be any of the black decks. I don't think it's necessarily like we're gonna blow them out of the water, but I think it's definitely like I think it's slightly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And as far as the Enel thing, I'm honestly not surprised by that at all. I actually think that Katakuri is the stronger leader between Enel because Enel is more just on delaying the game. It's not necessarily about, oh, I'm gonna out pressure you, essentially.
Yeah, and especially with with the banish cards and the 10 cost Big Mom. If they don't get those triggers off their life, you're just taking cards, and eventually, like once you take their last life and they've got to discard a card to put one on life, and then you can just find a way to banish it. Their card advantage is gone, and that's when you're able to take the game. I will say, I think in OP07, I think Onel is going to be the better leader, but I don't necessarily think that Katakuri is going to be, bad by any means.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna say this right now. I don't really have much to say about Red Purple Luffy or Bella Betty because I'm honestly not surprised. I could totally see that why Katakuri is favored against those two just because um Bella, I mean, you played Bella Betty, so you know how it is. It's not,
Yeah,
it's a fun deck, but if you don't hit that time window, if things don't happen in a certain amount of time, there's not really a whole lot you can do. And with Red Purple Luffy, I mean, the three, just being at 3 life, that just really sucks, especially since against like decks like this where they gain life. So I think Red Purple Luffy, when it went kind of had its time to shine for a little bit, but the current meta that we're in right now, I just don't think it's very good.
no, and especially when you can swing for 7K with one Dawn and you have a 6K leader. You really can't. They don't want to lose that 3 life, and then once you get into the late game, taking any of their life is easy. So it's just one of those matchups to where you you really don't want to be a Luffy player sitting across from a Katakuri.
Yeah. And then as far as Perona goes, yeah, I could see why it's favored because again, just out pressuring and I just overall think that I think Perona is really fun and I like it. In some ways, I think people kind of overhyped it a little bit just from what I've been seeing because I don't think it's not topping as much as I think or it's not doing as well as people thought they were going to. So I almost just think that it's like it's almost just a stripped down version of Moria in a sense to where you have a lot of the same stuff, but you can't do as much. But with Perona, you're able to rest a 4 cost every single turn that you play it. So you can rest a lot of blockers and you can get rid of a lot of things. But um yeah, so like you could rest Sanjis or Brulés and blockers. So I think that's really good. But overall, I could for the most part see why it's favored, but at the same time, I could also think I could see it also being in the 50-50. So the only one that I really disagree with is Moria. I think everything else on the favored side is, for the most part, makes sense.
Yep, and I had a feeling that's the one you're going to disagree on me with, which
Well,
is all right.
and again, I'm not just saying that because I'm a Moria player. I know that you're probably thinking, "Oh, Sean's just gonna say this just because he plays Moria," blah, 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 like all this shit. But like, and I mean, just from my experiences and also just in general, I think like being able to starve your opponent early game and just build a board super fast. Because I mean, again, that's how you beat Katakuri is out tempoing them. So
Oh yeah, no, especially in OP06. I'll put it obviously I think it's one of the top three right now with Gecko Moria, Katakuri, and Sakazuki. I think that's where it's at right now in OP06.
now let's go ahead and move to the unfavorable matches. So these are matches that Katakuri does not like going against, correct?
Yeah, no, you you don't want. These are the ones that you definitely don't want to see. So just Whitebeard, Green Uta, Film, Blue Nami, and then Red Purple Law. Kind of starting with that first one with Whitebeard, just they get the 6K swings. Yes, you can get good triggers, but it's just one of those things that they might lose 1 life every turn, but that card advantage in their hand, they can counter things. They can play a lot of stuff. They've got a lot of rush characters. It just is one of those things where they're aggressive like Zoro and Yamato, but that hand advantage they get with the leader ability just really just helps them
Yeah.
finish games out.
Yeah, no, for sure. Green Uta, that's not surprising at all because when I did the Uta kind of analysis video like a month or two ago, I remember saying that it has a really good matchup in the yellow, and that's just because you're able to spam the board and you just have so many tools at your advantage, like so much card draw. Like, so yeah, I could yeah, Uta is definitely a really good, and I think that's part of the reason why Uta is like not necessarily a tier 1 deck, but probably like a tier 2 or 2.5 deck. Because it has a really good matchup into that, and it has a really good matchup, well, a fairly good matchup into Sakazuki.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, just obviously with the ACOS kid, you get that out, you get it rested, you have some blockers. Speaking from experience as a Katakuri player, it is a really hard time to get rid of that kid. Now, if you can and you can get rid of some of their blockers in the process, you can maybe pull out the win. But if after a couple of turns go by and you can't get rid of that kid, you're just having a miserable time.
Right. Okay, so talk to me about Nami and Red Purple Law, because these ones I think I get, but I just want to like break it down for me. Like, why do we not like seeing these decks when we're playing Katakuri?
Yeah, so kind of with Nami is obviously their game plan is you're gonna swing at them and they're gonna counter out and draw a whole lot of cards. Um, the, like you can play all your cards, but they're not gonna KO your stuff. You're probably not like with Gadachi's pretty much useless because I mean you can KO a one drop, but they don't care if you KO that one drop as long as it's not Kaya, which they'll already bounce. Peril Sparrow, it's going to be out there swinging for 5K, but usually they can easily counter a 1K and they're never going to KO it, so it's just sitting out there. And then obviously the biggest one is the Big Mom package. 10 drop Big Mom is great, but you also don't necessarily just want to do that on your 10 Dawn turn and then pass, knowing that they have 10 Dawn up, and all they have to do is you just start taking the Big Mom shots and then countering everything else, and they'll probably try and deck. And then 7 cost, they're just going to let you gain a life because they don't want to lose one, and they don't care how much life you have because it's irrelevant um, in the game.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I
really
cannot.
knowing this, I actually went against. I ended up pulling out the win, but I did go against one last time at locals. But it was close, and that's why is I got to the point where I'm putting 10 Dawn on Katakuri and swinging and just seeing if they can counter out of it or not because I'm not gonna play anything. I've already got like 7 or 8 life that is irrelevant because they're never gonna swing.
I will say it does kind of make me a little happy that Nami is kind of starting to get like really starting to get like almost meta relevant in the most like previous sets, because I know like when Nami first came out, people were super excited. It says like, oh, a mill leader, and then like for a little bit, it kind of became a meme, and now people are like, no, Nami's actually starting to be really good. So I don't know. It's just kind of nice to see how much the game has changed over the last few sets.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely put Nami, tier two to 2.5. It definitely can beat some of those decks, but it definitely can hard lose, versus others.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and then Red Purple Law. This one is just tough because of the law leader ability. You just minus Dawn can bottom deck stuff, and that's what really sucks because that they can when they're bottom decking all your stuff, they're not KOing it, so you're not getting any effects. Your whole board's gone, and typically you're playing one, you're swinging at life and playing one character a turn. Well, that really sucks if every turn you now have no characters on board and maybe you're just swinging at life. Um, it just makes it really tough. And then the one of the toughest parts about it then is the 5 cost kid. They've got all these packages to be able to ramp all this Dawn to be able to sacrifice, to return it to be able to bottom deck your stuff. But then the hardest part is it's a 5K or a 5 cost blocker, which if you don't have reject in hand or off life, you're gonna have a really hard time getting through that blocker to be able to finish out the game.
Yeah. I will say with Red Purple Law, I feel like you have to be careful. Like I do think it's really good, and it has gotten better in the last few sets with them kind of not necessarily reprinting the Gordon, but there's a card that's literally the exact same thing as Gordon in OP06. But I still feel like you have to be careful, because it's like if you are just like if you're you getting rid of all your Dawn and not and just swinging for 5. your opponent could easily counter out. And then, yeah, they're losing cards in hand, but at the same time, it's like when you use up all your Dawn, then you could potentially just be swinging with like a bunch of lower stuff, like 5 costs or below, and they could still find a way to get out of it. So I think, but overall, yeah, I think Red Purple Law is it's a pretty rough match for Katakuri. But at the same time, you kind of have to know what you're doing. It's not like, oh, I'm playing Law, insta win against Katakuri. Like, no, there are ways that you can screw up that match. So you do kind of have to be careful.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a tough matchup. That is actually the matchup that I lost in my 3-0 game to the guy that actually won. He was playing Red Purple Law. Knew what he was doing. Ramped perfectly. Bottom decked my stuff nonstop. Once it gets to that point, it's like, man, I've got nothing on board, and I'm gonna hope I can finish this game out.
Shout out to that dude for showing it.
I know everyone was excited when Katakuri lost. So that's all right.
That's
Play the villain story.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, it's like it's nice to see like smaller decks, kind of have their time to shine. So, even if I am playing Moria and I lose to something that's like kind of niche, it's kind of cool. So
Everyone will be happy though. I did beat a Sakazuki, which everyone might not like yellow triggers, but everyone doesn't like Sakazuki more.
well, and it's getting banned. So well, banned. We're getting a newer Sakazuki leader, but it's probably just going to end up going into the bulk for most people. So
yeah, I think at that point you're gonna pick another one of the black leaders.
Yeah, I feel like most Sakazuki players are just going to become Moria leaders at this point.
Yes. I think OP07 we're going to see a lot of Moria. I think Enel's going to be the best deck in the format. I think Red Purple Law is going to be unstoppable.
And I'm cool. I'm all for that. So the last one, which super unfavorable, Horty Jones or Hody Jones. Yeah,
Hody Jones.
Colin.
Tier 0.
Yeah, so what's this all about?
Well, for anyone here that doesn't ever go on Reddit, you're gonna understand that Hody Jones is a tier 0, the best deck that you can currently play in the meta. If you take it to a store, take it to anything, you're going 4-0, you're going 5-0, you're winning your local tournament.
I'm not even gonna question that logic. I'm just not even gonna say anything.
Exactly. Now, I hope before you go out and purchase all these decks that you know that Hody Jones is definitely it can win games, but it is a meme. So
yeah, so you heard it here. Hody Jones, tier 0, baby.
Yeah.
Unstoppable. So if you know, you know. Okay. Cool. So that is like the matchups. I think the other portion that we were going to take a look at is if you want to pull up the tournaments that we have listed, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about those.
Yeah.
So real quick, we'll just kind of talk about third place, like the placings of each in these like big tournaments.
Yeah, so the one I want to highlight is the same gentleman, which I would like to shout out his name. Maybe we can add it in later. But he actually won 2 tournaments. He actually got first place in this top cut, and he just placed first place in the Carta Magica as well, using the same exact deck list. But that if I had to highlight one, that'd be what it is. Not the typical deck list I play, similar. But if there's a gentleman that you want to learn about that's being able to trigger well multiple weekends in a row, look for this gentleman.
What's his name?
Michael Curry.
Okay, so shout out to Michael Curry.
Yeah, Michael Curry. So took first place at Top Cut, which had over 1,000 people, and then took first place at Carta Magica, which had 961.
That's crazy.
So if you guys think you can't get lucky with yellow triggers multiple times multiple weekends in a row, you are mistaken.
So yeah, that's pretty crazy. And then those are those 2. So he got first in Top Cut and Carta Magica.
Yes, both with the identical category list.
Okay. And the most recent tournament would be the OPE, this one right here.
Yes. Yep. OP. Yeah, the one on the far left is the most recent. So third place finish. Obviously still fantastic. Um, in any any tournament. So at I think like over 500 people. So yeah, this one had 382 people. So took third place. Little side event that they did. Obviously we talked about the 2 top cuts. Then we got the Kazoku Cup, second place. Fantastic finish there.
So for the ones that it didn't get first in, do you know what it lost to?
I think a lot of it is Moria. Let me see, OPE. Yeah, so the first place finisher for this for the first event was Sakazuki. Second place was Moria.
Okay.
So so basically it's how the deck performs. You've got your top 3 decks in the meta. Obviously, sometimes it just comes down to how the cards are dealt. So yeah, you've got that. You've got the most recent tournament, right? Your top 3 decks in the format. Then you go down to top cut. Obviously, first place was Katakuri, and then a couple of they've only got a few lists online, but of course your top 32, they've got a couple Gecko Morias. I think that was another large portion of top finishers. And then the Kazuko Cup, obviously, took second place with first place being Gecko Moria, right? So at that point, lost the matchup.
Okay. So yeah. So we are seeing them in the top 3 still, but yeah, they are losing to. So they've only lost to Moria. It seems like in the most recent tournaments.
Yes, Moria, yeah, Moria, and then Sakazuki, kind of
Okay.
your toss up.
Yeah, that's like the big top 3. So that's just kind of like an overview and just kind of proves to you that Katakuri is still relevant in the meta for anyone who's watching this. And as we're talking this, that it's still relevant since OP03.
Oh yeah. So just just since OP06, you can see 28, top 32 finishes at least.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is fantastic if you think about how many decks there are, what people bring, consistency. I think a lot more people you're going to see bringing Sakazuki and bringing Moria compared to Katakuri. So you also have to take in consideration that Katakuri isn't the the most brought deck at these places. It's top 3, but that I think helps in the consideration of options.
Yeah. No, that's good. So yeah. So there you have it right there. You have the list, the main list breakdown. You have the matchups that it has in this current meta, and then you have the most recent tournaments, which in all 3 Katakuri topped in. And I mean, if you go on like Eggman's website and see like the charts and all that, it's still pretty big. So
Yes, I think his latest tournament, Katakuri actually won.
yeah. So there you have it. Katakuri, still big. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy more videos like this, please like and subscribe. We have more videos on the way. Again, if you're new to One Piece, definitely check out more of the channel. Until next time, guys.